Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Greetings, cultivators of fertile minds. Get your gardening tools ready because we are going to make hay while the sun shines, folks. Welcome to Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Now, in today's episode, we'll feed the hungry masses, but not with loaves or fishes. No, siree. The modern miracle will be in the form of mushroom soup with about 10 billion soupy grins in the future, I think. Now, we'll also show you how to draw fresh water out of dry air. And if you're going to stitch together some biological bits, then you're going to need a super fine needle. Just how fine? Well, we'll have more of that later. But not before we welcome our resident techspert to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Matthew Dickerson. How are you, Matt?
I like the fact that this techspert title is actually stuck now.
We're going to make it work.
That's right, it's happening. So do you remember the old days of stickers on your car for your registration?
Oh, yeah.
And I remember...
I'm not so young.
I remember as a kid, I don't know how, I'm the youngest in our family, so maybe it just got lumped onto me, but we had these stickers that you had to put in some water. You'd put on a little saucepan of water, and then you'd slide that off onto the windscreen. You old enough to remember these ones? Or you just
no, I don't remember that. I remember the ones that you couldn't peel off.
Right, okay. So
not with a razor blade.
Well, they were the ones that you'd stick them on and slide them off with the water, and then you couldn't get them off. Except if you did the same thing in reverse, you'd put a sponge on the back or something. But a razor blade was the normal way. So, Matt, go out there and get the razor blade and peel the old one off and then put this new one on. So that was a bit of a drama.
Yeah.
And then they went to a good old-fashioned adhesive, which was a bit better because you could just peel it off and peel the old one off. I actually wondered what happened with the first ones if ever you broke your windscreen. And then not so much replacing the windscreen, that wasn't a drama, but getting a new registration label would have been a drama, I can imagine, because they wouldn't have been handing them out like lollies.
No.
The idea of those was they were colour-coded. And I'm not sure exactly how complicated the colour coding was because you might have one colour for a year maybe, but your registration didn't finish on the 31st of December.
Yeah.
So they might have had colour coding per month, per year, but it would have been a pretty eagle-eyed policeman.
Pretty hard to keep track of if you were looking for colours.
That's right.
Because how often do they recycle these colours? You know?
Exactly right. So you're driving along and spotting cars as they come past, seeing a colour of a label. Oh, that's just expired last month. I better pull that person over because they're driving an unregistered car. So they've now moved on. It was about 12 years ago that New South Wales moved on where they said, forget about registration labels. And I know some people were a bit uneasy about this because it was a bit of a reminder.
Yeah, it
that
was.
Your car was registered.
Yeah.
So they moved away and they said the admin work and the waste of resources to send out those labels or send out the rego papers and get your labels, et cetera, all of that, irrelevant. We're just going to go electronic and everything will be fine. And it is mostly. But I had a story the other day where someone got pulled over by the police. And it's the first time in their life they told me they were happy to be pulled over by the police. And they got a ticket, they got a fine, and they were pulled over and they
gave
said...
the cop a hug and
almost.
Yeah,
good
right.
way and away you go. But the policeman pulled over and said, I'm pulling you over because you're driving an unregistered vehicle. And they said, what do you mean? So, well, I've got on... It's almost a mini office in the dash or in the cockpit of a police car now. And as you drive along, the automatic number plate recognition can scan. Some of those devices can scan, they claim hundreds per second, but typically they're scanning every car that goes past, and it's just checking that registration plate. Is that registered? Something happens, comes up on the dash of the car, and the policeman then turns around and comes back to say, hold on, you've got an issue here. But this person had no idea they were unregistered. They'd actually changed their address, and so their registration papers hadn't gone to their new address.
Right.
And they hadn't thought about it because there's no sticker on the car reminding you.
You're not thinking about your registration
you got
for 365 days a year.
That's right, 1,000 things to think about. Rego's not usually one of them. You just think it's taken care of. And the issue here was, imagine if that person had had an accident. Imagine if they had an issue where they injured someone or
without a CTP green slip.
Without your green slip, without your I'm sure the insurance company would take advantage of that and not pay any insurances out. So that would have been a major issue. So they were thankful that they got pulled over, not loving the fine, obviously, but thankful they got pulled over because it could have been a much bigger issue. But it does just bring to the fore that sometimes when we change technology, you've got to make sure you've got all your systems up to date to take advantage of that. So maybe in this case, New South Wales in the RMS maybe should have some way of alerting people you haven't re-registered. There may be some reminder. What have you done with that car? If you haven't registered, we haven't recorded you've sold it, where is that car? Is it an accident? Is it written off? Or maybe there's a proactive way to get there. But it was actually quite fascinating just how good those number plate recognition processes are, and then finding that process.
Yeah, just the fact that they've got themselves a whole police station in their car.
Essentially, that's just about it. And all the records of everyone, whenever you get pulled over, they I saw that 28 years ago you were caught doing 3 kilometres. Jaywalking, that's right. You weren't holding your parents' hand walking across the road. So, anyway, quite fascinating with that technology.
Yes. Well, okay, folks, we better get stuck into today's episode with our planned stories. Now, imagine this. You're the first on the scene at a medical emergency, one where the patient's heart has stopped. Now, an ambulance may be on its way, but it's got to deal with all the traffic and whatnot, and what are you going to do? So defibrillators, they're pretty common around the place these days, but they're not everywhere. Now, Matt, we may be entering a time, though, where just like Superman, one may just drop in from you out of the sky to save the day.
It is a bit of a combination of technologies, but I want to talk first of all about the old Packer-whackers. Do you remember those?
No.
Kerry Packer in 1990, Australia's richest man at the time, was playing polo, as you do when you're Australia's richest man, and he had a heart attack. Now, luckily, there was an ambulance there and it had a defib in the ambulance. So here's 1990, Kerry Packer lay there, family, oh my gosh, what's happening here with our Kerry? And the ambulance comes over, puts the Packer-whacker on, or puts the defib on, and gives him a whack and comes back. And he was so grateful, he rang the Premier of the state and said, I've heard that not every ambulance has one of these defibrillators. The one I had, or the one that was near me, there was actually one where he was actually playing polo at, had a defib. So I'm probably only here today because of that. So how about I donate enough money for you to put one in every ambulance? Yeah. He didn't quite do that. He actually matched. The Premier said, well, maybe the Premier was embarrassed that one individual was going to fit out the whole ambulance lot. And so he said, I'll go your half. So Kerry Packer donated $2.5 million. New South Wales government donated put $2.5 million in, and they put a defib in every ambulance, and they were affectionately known as the Packer-whackers because they were used on, or the same concept was used on Kerry Packer's heart to give him a bit of a whack. And then if you jump forward 30 years from that, in 2020, Greg Page, who's the yellow wiggle, he was on stage and pretty active. The Wiggles are pretty active, jumping and dancing around. And he had a cardiac arrest. And I remember I actually spoke to him about this, and he said, I thought I was pretty fit and healthy, but you can have other signs that are just lurking there, and had a cardiac arrest. But that was luckily around the time that AEDs started appearing in various clubs and public spaces. And so where he was, there was one on the wall. Someone's grabbed it off the wall, stuck it on his chest, followed the verbal instructions, bang, come back to life. And he's now founded Heart of the Nation, where he tries to raise funds to roll out lots more AEDs around the place. So that's all great. If you have a cardiac arrest and there's one nearby, which is a reasonable chance there might be one nearby, that's fantastic. If not, an ambulance, or the ambulances certainly in our state now have Packer-whackers, have defibs in them. But the average response times, which I think is pretty impressive, is about 8 minutes in a major city for an ambulance to get to you. That's pretty impressive.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So
but that's still 8 minutes without having a heartbeat.
Correct. And this is the thing. They say that if you have a cardiac arrest and you get a defib on you within 1 minute, you've got a 90% chance of survival. So what a wonderful piece of technology. Invented in 1968, the portable defib. So pretty cool technology. But every minute after that, your chance of surviving goes down by 10%.
Right.
So 8 minutes to get to you. Again, I'm impressed that they can get a call through, get an address, get on in your car and off you go, and get to that place within 8 minutes. Wow. But if you can get there quicker, obviously it makes a big difference. But if it's not 8 minutes because it's really busy traffic trying to get around that, it's 10 or 12 or 13. Yeah, that's saying to say your chances are getting pretty slim, I reckon, by the time you're getting out of that 10 or 12 minutes. So in North Carolina, they're trialling a concept where you ring 911. This is in America, of course. Ring 911, 000 in Australia. You'll get an ambulance being dispatched straight away. So on average, major city, 8 minutes on its way. But at the same time, they're dispatching a drone. And the drone's got an AED hanging out of its belly.
And the drone's not worried about traffic. It's
going straight to you.
Yeah, wow.
It goes along about 60 metres above the ground, straight to where you get to. And then when it gets there, it's got a little winch on it, and it just drops down. It drops down to about 30 metres off the ground and then drops down the AED. So it might get there on average, they're saying, about 3 to 5 minutes faster than the ambulance.
Wow.
Now, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
So, and then again, you know you've done the training for AED, so you know what happens then once you've got it.
Yeah.
The verbal instructions.
You open it up and it starts
Away
talking.
it goes. So nothing changes there.
Yeah.
You might still have the 911 operator on the phone with you, so they might talk you through some of those things, but you don't really need that once you've got the AED there. So that's pretty cool.
How
and then it's just a
amazing is
matter.
that? And what an amazing piece of initiative.
Well, it is, but it's also, I love the fact that we're combining technology. So we've got drones, and you can use them to look over your neighbour's next door neighbour's yard and see what's going on there, or whatever useful things you might do with your drone.
Yeah.
But we've got that. We've got AEDs. So put those two together.
Yeah.
And so setting up an ambulance station can't be an inexpensive thing to do. Having an ambulance decked out ready to go is a fairly expensive process. Having people sitting around ready to go is an expensive process. But having drone stations, let's call them that, AED drone stations. We know we've got AEDs at various locations, but imagine having AED drone stations at various locations, so you could cut that time down without a lot of expense. I can imagine that drone could just sit there. It'd probably be able to have solar panels on it. We've talked about that in wartime, but have solar panels on there to keep the battery charged up of the drone and the AED, because that's an issue too. You don't want to grab your AED and go, oh, whoops, there's no battery in it. So, so having all that sitting there just at various locations around cities and country locations, I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah,
so
what a step forward.
it is. I think it's actually a really clever use of technology.
Now, virtual reality is about to step up another gear, folks. Software designers have got the whole vision and sound thing pretty much down pat these days with today's VR headsets. But now, haptic wearables will also bring the sensation of touch right to your fingertips while you wander the virtual world. Matt, for the fully immersive experience, this brings the whole new dimension to the game.
It does, and it sounds pretty impressive. We've got a bit of haptic processing now with vibrations.
Yeah.
But it's pretty basic, isn't it? You've
Yeah.
got vibration at different frequencies, and it gives you some sensation that something's
And we'll
happening.
look back at it, the days where, I remember when your phone just vibrated. And,
That's right.
yeah. But now you've got this fully, immersive sense of touch.
Well, you've got a thing called electroadhesion. And so that's kind of the way a balloon sticks to a wall. So you get, with electroadhesion, you can get sensations of friction, of grip, of texture. And they did some testing, for example, and they said, feel this fabric. And all it was little tiny sensors on your fingers. The actual nodes are about 1.6 millimetres apart. And you put it on like you would put on a very tight-fitting glove in terms of very nicely fitting around your fingers to feel these sensations. And so they said, here are some substances that you would make clothing out of, not giving too many hints away, not showing them many pictures. Can you feel what that is? And just by the sensation fed through these fingertips, they could say, that's leather, or that's terry toweling, or that's corduroy. So the participants could pick that accurately 81% of the time. So that's pretty cool. And then you start to get to the point where you can feel the tension of a bowstring. If you were playing some game where we had a bowstring, you can feel the slickness of a doorknob. So that's in terms of VR sensing. And so they're now starting to call this VR, not VR, XR, extra reality, because of course it's got to be better than VR.
Where are they going to go after that?
That's
It's
right.
going to have to be HR,
XYZ
hyper
or
reality
something.
or whatever.
Yeah,
so
maybe
got to leave space here, folks.
So all of this is about feeling things and being able to, I suppose gaming is the big area for this, but I suppose there's other ways you might be able to use it as well. You might be able to give you, for example, a feeling when you're in a change room. We've talked before about having the sizing right when we're trying on our clothes virtually, but imagine the feel of that clothing being right as well. And whenever I'm looking for how might this technology be used, I'm normally looking for the commercial application. There might be some really good ways to use it in a non-commercial way, but you know that the commercial way is going to drive more research, it's going to drive more outcomes, because someone's going to make money out of it.
That's right, there's got to be a buck to be made.
That's right. So gaming definitely is a way to go. But the virtual trial, I just think we're going to get better and better with our virtual change rooms. We've talked about sizing, talked about the feel of clothing. You really won't need to go into a store for much longer to be able to feel and make sure everything's right before you get those clothes delivered to you accurately.
Yeah.
So this is going to keep going on. I just think we're going to see gaming, we're going to see shopping, maybe even accessibility when people have lost some sensations, whether they've got that ability to feel those sensations
to regain
again.
those,
Maybe, I'm not sure. I suppose I'm spitballing a little bit here, but that whole virtual. We're not going to need to live in the real world much longer, are we? Just plug my brain into something and I'll be there out there in the virtual world.
Well, we've only got taste and smell to go, and they're working on those pretty heavily
Smell-o-vision.
too.
Smell-o-vision was a big thing, wasn't it?
Yeah,
That
it was.
gonna be
We were waiting
all
for
the
it and
go.
waiting for it. It still hasn't happened, but it's on the cards.
That's right.
Now, the art of 3D printing just gets finer and finer and finer. The printing materials at hand these days are so diverse and the possibilities are endless. But one thing that bioengineers are finding is that they have been limited by nozzle size. Of course, it makes perfect sense. You can't expect to stitch something as fine as a network of capillaries together if you're pouring your proteins out through something as clumsy as a pen nib. Matt, for some jobs you need a nozzle as fine as a Mozzie's proboscis, don't you?
We often talk about the fact that we steal ideas from nature. Humans go, oh, actually, look at that. Nature's got it pretty all right. We should do the same thing. But now they're not stealing ideas from nature. They're stealing from nature. Yeah. So they're actually harvesting the little proboscis from mosquitoes.
My goodness.
So the female Aedes aegypti mosquito has a proboscis that's 20 micrometers in internal diameter. Now, the best they've been able to get in normal nozzles that we make, that humans make, good old humans, is 35 micrometers.
Yeah, okay.
So
Mozzie's proboscis is even finer.
Correct. So they basically are now, and much cheaper. The ones that we make are about $115 each. But there are people now employed that are taking mosquitoes, taking each biological nozzle, and it costs them about $2 in labour costs to get each one. Right. Now, it doesn't last as long as a man-made one, but it still gives them about 2 weeks of use out of that, so obviously much cheaper. You get it working for a little bit less time.
I think replacing these things, like having to fit it into the machine.
Well, I want to know how you harvest the mosquitoes. Yeah. So, because the only way I catch a mosquito is by squishing it on my arm. And maybe that's enough. Maybe parts of it survive that squishing process. Yeah. But where do you go to say, let's go and harvest some mosquitoes? And how do you
some
capture
mosquitoes
them?
flying around without any nose.
That's
without
right. They probably wouldn't be able to get much use to them after that. So the idea here is that if you can get that delivery small enough, if you can get that actual nozzle small enough, then they're starting to do things like printing blood vessels. It's all about being able to do replacement organs. And so we need to get fairly fine printing to be able to get to that point. So being able to replace or print these I think, look, my prediction will be 10 years away and we'll be printing organs because we're getting so good with 3D printing now. Yeah. And it's just a composition of different elements together to make up that.
If you've got the right proteins in there.
That's right. So one of the things that nature has got an advantage, of course, is that they've been fine-tuning these processes for millions of years, and we come along and go, we can make one of those, but why not steal from nature? So sorry to any of those people out there who are mosquito lovers. I think mosquitoes have been harmed during this process, and they'll continue
There's no
to
way
be harmed.
around it.
That's right.
We're harvesting their whole feeding parts. So,
that's right.
Yeah.
They can't keep feeding anymore. So I don't think they're going to survive this process. But the good news is that we'll probably come out much better off out of it.
So last week we brought you the story of Waymo, the autonomous taxi company, possibly setting up camp in Sydney, eager to stamp their name internationally. And they've got good reason to be eager because a challenger has arrived on the scene back in the US, and that means the days of the lure of a novelty are numbered. It's competition time. Matt, the driverless taxi space is about to heat right up.
I need to get to San Francisco and go for a bit of a ride.
Yeah,
because it's really the hotbed.
They've got it in LA as well, and they've got it in Phoenix and Austin and Atlanta, I believe.
And San Fran seems to have been an early adopter of some of these. And there was a bit of backlash in the very early days. There were some protests happening. There were fears about job losses, about safety. And Cruise, one of the first companies that set up in San Francisco, had a bit of an incident where they dragged a pedestrian along for a little way.
That's bad publicity.
Bad publicity, that's right. If you're trying to push the safety message, then that's not great. Cruise aren't in San Francisco at the moment. They kind of went, this isn't going so well for us. How about we withdraw for a while and get our technology sorted out? But Waymo have now got 2,500 vehicles.
2,500?
That's right.
Wow.
And they did start off with a very small radius where they said, we know these streets perfectly, we're comfortable there. But they've started to expand to the point where they can now do freeway trips down to Phoenix and LA. So they're expanding how far they'll go, which is good because if you get it in your
and
taxi,
you can only go around the block.
That's right.
It's
not much
just
good.
a novelty.
And how do you have the argument with the taxi driver that doesn't exist? No, I want to go there, okay?
But, I hear that San Francisco is a pretty tricky city to have to navigate if you're an autonomous vehicle.
And I wonder if that's why they've chosen. If they can make it in San Francisco, they can make it anywhere.
Yeah.
to coin a song.
There's got to be a song in that.
That's right. So Amazon has now launched Zoox, Z-O-O-X, in San Francisco. They've got a free pilot program, so people would choose that over Waymo. Because interestingly enough, I thought it would have been the other way, but Waymo is dearer than, say, Uber or Lyft, and not insignificantly dearer, about 40% dearer than both Uber and Lyft. So
Yeah, I wonder why that is.
I think just the cost of the vehicles, but I thought trying to get people to adopt it, they would have said, let's make it really cheap, get lots of people using it. But maybe they've got more than enough people using it if they've got 2,500
Maybe
vehicles
they've
there.
just been relying on the novelty and people want to just ride in the taxi for the novelty's sake.
Maybe. You're probably not going to complain about the price for the novelty value, are you? It's like
Yeah.
it's a joyride with
Yeah.
a small cost to it. So Zoox has started up. They've got a free pilot program. They'll keep running around again. They've got a fairly small radius at this stage while they start their first testing out. But it's good to see some competition there. And this is going to keep driving in San Fran and across the world as they keep rolling out, and different companies, maybe Cruise will come back in the market, who knows. But there's certainly a number of them out there. You've got Tesla, obviously, of driving with their autonomous vehicles. You've got Motional, you've got Badoo. So you've got a few out there. Maybe we'll see lots of different brands in San Francisco, and maybe lots of that testing will then get to the point where wherever we go, we just know we'll have a driverless taxi there.
But for mine, it just made sense that Waymo, in light of this story, is putting their feelers out across the world because they want to be the first out in the world before these other competitors step up and take advantage.
And another thing I found interesting was that Waymo uses iPace, the Jaguar, so the Jaguar EV, but the Zoox vehicle is kind of a more customised vehicle. No driver's seat, no steering wheel. So it gets a bit scarier.
That becomes disconcerting when you step into a car that's got no driving.
That's right.
No driving mechanisms,
Yeah. At least with a Jaguar sitting there, you go, I can see the steering wheel moving.
Yeah.
I feel like that makes sense.
Yeah.
And if I had to, maybe I could jump across. You probably couldn't jump across and grab the steering wheel and take control. But you jump in the Zoox and it's 4 people it fits that are facing each other. So kind of sit there and 2 people go backwards, 2 people go forwards.
It's like an old chariot chariot, the horse and carriage, the Cobb and
exactly.
Co thing.
That's right. So someone somewhere is driving it. Well, it's all autonomous, of course, but that might be a little bit interesting for people to jump in and just go, do I feel comfortable with this? Anyway.
A real leap of faith to start off with.
It is, exactly right.
Yeah, I can't see this not taking over.
Well, it's got to. And the big thing that all the companies push is that, say, for example, in the US, about 41,000 people a year die on the roads. And they talk about the fact that these vehicles, autonomous vehicles, don't get tired. They don't get distracted. They don't look away and say to the kids in the backseat, hey, stop mucking up. They don't drive under the influence of alcohol. So there's all these different advantages they've got. So even though you might see some incidents with these vehicles, then presumably with all of those disadvantages that humans have got, these have got to get to the stage where they're safer.
Yeah.
It still seems a bit scary, doesn't it?
Now, in the 80s, social status for a kid was pretty easy to read and understand, I reckon. Social capital was measured in Star Wars figurines, bike brands, and Nintendo Game & Watch toys. They were simpler times. But in 2025, though, a new trend is kicking off in China and may spread globally. There are a bunch of reasons why parents are strapping smartwatches to their kids' wrists. But, Matt, for the kids, the type of smartwatch means everything. Social capital.
It is, and it's interesting. I'm involved in technology, so one of the challenges I had with my children growing up was how old do they need to be before they get their first phone. And there weren't smartphones back when my kids were growing up. They were flip phone. The first phone they got was a Samsung flip phone. And did I have to hold out till they got to high school? That seemed like the accepted age, but my kids are there seeing technology around them every day.
Yeah.
Can I get one younger than that, Dad? Oh, Mum and Dad. And it's like, oh, maybe. And I think we did give in. I think it was probably 6th class before they finally got their first phone.
Yeah.
And so you felt like, are we dooming them to a life of technology where they don't need to be? Are they too young for it? But I feel pretty good about myself now when I read about this story, when in China, kids as young as five years of age are being given smartwatches by their parents. Now, the parents say it's for safety, it's for communication, it's location tracking. And the first thing I thought of is, I don't remember when my 5-year-old was somewhere where I didn't know.
Had no idea where they were.
They were there or they were under supervision. So
Yeah.
they might have been at school or at childcare. I'm pretty confident there's some people that are responsible for them there. And then they're with myself or my wife, pretty much, or maybe their grandparents.
Yep.
I just don't remember saying, I'll drop you off downtown, 5-year-old, and I'll pick you up in a couple of hours. So location tracking I thought was interesting.
We had a couple of times, though, I'll say with our kids, where we lost one in a crowd.
Right.
And thought a smartwatch would have been really handy.
That's right. Rightio, so no comment on parental skills here in this
That's
room.
right. Oh, dear.
So these watches, the most popular brand is the one called Little Genius, and they're about $500, so they're not cheap. But the whole concept that the parents want the watches for is being lost on the kids. And what's happening with the kids is they're getting points for a whole range of things. If they post an update, if they play a game, if they exercise, which sounds like a good thing, but they're also using these to like things on other people's smartwatches. So you're building up this social capital, and it's not just social capital in, oh, James is nice, let's go and talk to James, he's a nice guy. It's very much a point scoring thing. So you've got all these different rules and gamification involved in it. And so people are just getting, or kids are getting obsessed with these. And what a fertile mind to be obsessed with something. You start to get 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, wow, all this learning, all these connections that are waiting there to be made in their brain, and
Locked
they're
in.
addicted to these.
Yep.
Some people have said to me it may well be the Chinese concept where the state likes to control people to a certain extent and likes to make sure that they're in control. So maybe that control starts at a very young age, and so maybe the state is happy with this, but it seems to me like it's just way too young to start getting there. So Chinese regulators are a little bit concerned about it. They want to actually introduce national safety standards for children's smartwatches. That sounds like it's pretty serious, doesn't it? And that's all about focusing on addiction, inappropriate content, and overspending, but kids are absolutely obsessed with these, and they are getting up in the morning, that's the first thing they check, going to bed at night, last thing they look at, and getting all these different likes. So we're talking about the whole ban on social media for under 16-year-olds in Australia because the young mind is being influenced in a whole range of ways that isn't good for them, but we're getting this problem much bigger with 5-year-olds and just all these social pressures that are being put on them. Wow, it's a complicated world. Thank goodness I haven't got kids that young anymore.
Yeah, and thank goodness I didn't have to worry about that. We were just worried about Star Wars figurines and Nintendo Game & Watches. Yeah. Farming in the future is likely to look very different to how it looks today. No surprises there. As resources run thinner and thinner, demand is set to increase more and more, and that's a big problem for a hungry planet. We as a population are going to need to get creative about how we source our protein sustainably. Now we've known about mushrooms as a source of protein for ages, but Matt, we're going to need our bioengineers to soup them up a lot to feed our growing demand. Am I right?
Yeah, you're right. And I'm pretty comfortable with this, but there are some people who are very uncomfortable with this.
Yeah, not big fans of mushrooms.
Right. Well,
I love a mushroom.
I was more talking about CRISPR, more so than mushrooms.
Oh, okay. Oh, so the CRISPR technology people aren't a fan of?
No, there are some people who are horrified by CRISPR. So CRISPR, CRISPR is genome editing. And just for the nerds out there, which I know many of them are listening to our podcast, CRISPR stands for Clustered, Regularly, Interspaced, Short, Palindromic Repeats. Not
Very
something
good.
that rolls off the tongue, which is why they've got CRISPR.
Yeah.
And so by using CRISPR and gene editing, they've been able to take, change the properties. And that's where people get a bit concerned, I suppose. What they miss, I suppose, is that nature has changed the property of everything on this planet for billions of years.
That's evolution.
Correct, that's right. Maybe it's just fast evolution when we use something like CRISPR.
Well, and it's also us choosing what characteristics we want to be able to reproduce and grow.
That's right, but we kind of do that anyway.
We've done that through farming all along by having selective breeding.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we've got
ever
selective
since
breeding. We've got
11,000 years we've been doing selective breeding.
And that's, I don't know whether it feels better because it's kind of us choosing and then helping nature go in the right direction.
Yeah.
Whereas when you get to genome editing, it's...
No, it's very specific.
It is very specific.
And it's where you can take a gene from a different organism completely and slot it into another organism.
And I find it absolutely fascinating, genome editing, But then, I can understand why people get a bit scared about it. So here's our problem. Animal protein. We need more animal protein. Global demand is going to double by the year 2050, which makes sense. Our population is going to keep driving up. And traditional animal ag contributes anywhere 15 to maybe even 20%, some data shows, of greenhouse emissions, because we've got methane coming from cows typically is a big contributor there. So that's a problem. So do we grow more cows? Do we grow more animals to try and feed the population? Well, we already know, we've talked about lab-grown meats in the past.
Yeah.
Some people are a bit funny about that. Vegetarians are unsure whether they like it now or it's okay. So we've got some things there, but fungal protein is something that, well, we've got a good start. But the problem is that you've got problems with thick cell walls that are hard for us to digest, and you've also got intensive resources to grow. So some researchers from Jingnan University said, well, let's throw CRISPR at this problem. Let's see what we can do. So what they've been able to do is they've created a gene-edited strain, 44% less sugars to produce the same amount of protein.
Wow.
And that's what you can do when you start editing genes. You just go, well, we want more of that. Okay, let's just change that. So it sounds like magic, and it almost is. And also, it produces protein 88% faster than the original strain. So you basically need less resources to grow the protein, and then you get more protein out of it. And of course, then you change it slightly so that you don't make the actual walls, the thick cell walls, as hard to break down. So it just feels like, I want something that does this, this, and this. Sure, give me a minute. I'll just go and whack it in CRISPR and away we go.
Yeah.
A bit more complicated than that. But still, the focus there is really, how do we produce the foods we're going to need in the most resource efficient way to deliver for the planet.
Well, it's not the first time we've hit this dilemma, and it was over just over 100 years ago that we realised that we didn't have enough cow manure, sheep manure, pig manure to be able to grow crops to feed a population of more than about 1.5 billion people. And Fritz Haber, who was a German and in World War One, he did a couple of nasty things, like allowed Germany to have World War One by inventing the Haber process. But he actually was awarded a Nobel Prize for Chemistry for being able to create synthetic fertilizer.
Right.
And in creating synthetic fertilizer, all of a sudden we're able to have enough nutrient in the soil now to be able to grow crops that would feed a population of 8, 9 or 10 billion. Yeah. But now we're getting to the ceiling of that. We now need to think of other ways of getting or souping up our agriculture. And
I think that's the thing, isn't it? We have changed a lot over the years.
Yeah.
And one of the things is people might be comfortable with it to begin with, and then after it's been around for a while, it kind of gets to the stage where it's accepted. Synthetic fertilizers, imagine saying, I'm not going to eat any foods.
Anything that's made from synthetic fertilizer. I like cow poo on my greens.
That's right, I want genuine cow poo. And I don't know you'd be able to find a crop that was grown without some sort of synthetic fertilizer. Maybe
that's right.
Organic crops claim that they've got no synthetic fertilizers, but gee, it's a
we just do it now because we have to, because the soil wouldn't otherwise have the nutrients that it needs.
Yeah. So gene-edited mushrooms, basically, to give us what we need in proteins. Fantastic.
And I'm up for it. I say bring it on.
That's right.
Now, talking about a lack of resources to support our agriculture, the hunt for fresh water sources is going to be a major distraction sooner than you think. But if there's one thing that humans do well, it's solve really tricky problems. And so a bunch of engineers at MIT are developing a way to suck water from thin air. Matt, off-grid atmospheric water generators, every home should have one, no?
That's right, they should. And maybe we do. Forget about the town water supply. Just go and have your own little water supply. Now, we've talked about it before where you can take water out of the atmosphere. We've got humidity, and even in areas that we think are pretty dry, like a desert-type area, there's still some humidity in the air. The problem with all the other ones we've talked about in the past is you can collect the water, but you need some type of heat, maybe from the sun, or some type of heat, maybe from power sources, to extract that water out to actually get it to be a liquid that you can actually use for something useful, like maybe drinking. So this is taking a different approach, because the other processes are either expensive in terms of energy. You might not have, if you've got somewhere that's got no drinking water, you may not have a power point nearby as well. Yeah. Or the second thing is that you might need a long period of time. If you're not relying on the sun, you might need a long period of time. So some researchers, as you said, at MIT have said, we've got an idea around using high-frequency ultrasonic vibrations, not to heat up the water and to turn it into steam and then have it drip down the side of a glass type of thing. We think we can shake the water out if we get the right frequency.
We're going to rattle the water out of the air.
That's right. Well, almost. It's not quite out of the air. So they'll still absorb the water in some type of hyper-absorbent material, which they do exist. But once it's in that material, well, you don't just pick it up and squeeze it and out drips the water. You've got to get the water out somehow. And that's what they've typically used, some type of heat or some type of solar energy. So that's when they're now applying that high-frequency ultrasonic vibration to that substance, and then you've got little collectors around that, and that water literally shakes out of this substance.
Isn't that amazing? Using sound to collect your water.
Yeah, so you need power still, so you need some energy to do that, but the amount of power you need, you're not trying to heat it up. It takes a lot of energy to heat things up.
Heat is our largest waste of energy.
Yeah, so if you've got water in something, you're right, we just need to apply heat to that. Well, that's a long or expensive process, but this, it still needs some power to drive it. But the belief is that you've got enough power you could have from a solar panel, not just to heat it up, but a solar panel to run high-frequency vibrations. And then the good part, or probably the best part about it all, is that typically with other processes, it's hours to extract water. So here's a little water device. In a few hours' time, we'll have a bit of water that we could actually use or drink, and depending how large it is, how many people. But this can do it within minutes, maybe 15, 20 minutes, depending on how big it is. So you've got this constant cycle you can have throughout the day where you'll collect the water, you'll vibrate it out, collect the water, vibrate it out. So you might be able to have 4 or 5 cycles throughout the day to actually extract that water. So the ability to extract enough water is much greater. But yeah, what an amazing concept. But again, I talk about it so much. Who sat there and went, why don't we just shake the water out? And everyone laughed at them and said, you're crazy. Oh, I've just got this little idea. I might just try that. And next thing you know, before you realise, you've got this device that shakes water out of air.
Yeah, but that would have come by a number of steps. So they would have observed something that happened, and then something else, and then something else, and then something else has happened. And they've gone, you could use that technology to shake water out of... Anyway, I love the scientific process. I love those moments of epiphany.
Yeah,
and I love hearing the stories about them.
And that's what I mean. It's just there's so many things you see happen. You just go, how do they think about that? What are those steps? I want to trace those steps through to get to that final conclusion. Yeah. And even still, then someone said, I just wonder. And you've still got to have that final leap of faith almost to go and actually set that up and try and do it. And then once you've got it, start refining it.
And everyone else is looking around you going, they're crazy.
And then they say...
trying to shake the moisture out of the air.
And then we goes, well, that's obvious, isn't it? Once it happens, yeah, anyone can see that.
Now, whenever we do a story here at Tech Talk about robots, regular listeners will detect a pattern in our analysis, because the true measure of robotic success is, will it clean the house? Matt, Sunday Robotics have built a domestic robot called Memo. Is Memo going to bring us any joy? Are we even close?
We are getting closer, and Memo have gone away, or Sunday Robotics have gone away from a lot of the humanoid robots. Everyone loves the idea of a humanoid robot, and they've gone, gee, that's good. That looks like me, looks like a person that can help me, so I feel comfortable with that.
But humanoid robots, they're a dime a dozen now, aren't they?
That's right. But they're also...
we need something different.
They're quite difficult to build a humanoid robot. Like our legs and ankles and knees, they're all pretty complicated. Balance. So Sunday Robotics have said, forget that. We're going back to good old Rosie the robot from the Jetsons. We're having a wheel. We're putting wheels on the base of this because that's easier. But if you've got stairs, that's a bit of a problem. But in general, if you've got a single floor house, then we're going for a wheel. They've got a wheel base. They've got a telescope column so you can get up and down to different heights. And then here's the secret with this one that makes this one just a little bit different. They've got gloves that were used by humans to train the robot. So these gloves were put on, and they're gloves that are feeding information back to a data center or a learning center, if you like, and then a human would go and do things in the kitchen. They'd go and pick up glasses from the table, they'd tip out the bit of water in the sink, and then they'd put it in the dishwasher. They'd do various things in the kitchen. They'd make coffee. They'd go to the espresso machine, they'd get the caffeine, the beans out, and they'd grind them or whatever they do, and they'd do all these processes, and then the robot would imitate from what had been learned from the person wearing the gloves.
Do you know what would get me, though? I'd be so scared of being clumsy and dropping a glass or something, fumbling, spilling something. Or
Can you go Control Z, undo.
Undo. Oh, no.
What I liked about this, though, is that if, for example, and the idea is that these will be in homes next year, a beta version in homes next year, if you've got something that you do that you would like to be done, you can put on the gloves and train it for that activity.
Teach your robot how to do that.
That's right. So you can do it. And if you, when I used to give the kids a job to do, just go and sweep the floor. You go, no, you don't sweep the floor like that. And then they trick me into sweeping the floor and going, I have to show them. Can you keep showing us, Dad? Sure, I'll keep showing you. Oh, the whole floor's done now. Thanks, Dad. But you would actually be able to say, I want it done this way. And you know it would actually be done that way.
So, Memo, does it have 2 hands, or does it have, it's like a spider got 8 hands, or what?
No, well, that makes more sense, actually, doesn't it? But no, 2 hands. So
2 hands.
A telescope
So
body and 2 hands.
And a wheel, and this looks like a cartoon in my head.
And I'm not convinced it's got 1 wheel. I think it's got a few wheels.
Right, okay.
Although the technology is good enough. We see Segways with their auto balancing.
And there was another robot that was getting around that just had 1 wheel.
Yeah, that was Rosie.
That was yeah, okay, sorry. But this has definitely got a cartoon feel about it in my mind's eye.
And the telescope to lift up and down to different heights you can just see it popping up from underneath the bench, can't you? Going, oh, what up? I didn't realise you were there. But I do like this concept where you train it. You've got your own robot, and rather than it doing things the way that it was taught at the factory, you teach it how to do things with your special gloves. So you know that. This is self-interest here. I'm just after a robot in my home. I want to be lazy. I want the robot to do stuff for me. I want any of these to get to the point where it's finally got a machine that's ready to come into my home.
And picking up socks out of the lounge room.
Exactly right. Picking up socks, getting them the right way around to put in the washing machine, pairing them up perfectly. So all sorts of just normal, traditional things we like to see done.
We're getting closer.
We are, absolutely.
Now, with recent developments in EV tech drawing insane rates of acceleration, more like a bullet out of a gun than a 4-seater transport vehicle, there clearly needs to be some sort of regulations put in place before large numbers of people start having enormous accidents, surely. And Matt, Porsche's Cayenne Turbo EV may be just the catalyst for that, an SUV no less, that would leave most supercars in a cloud of dust.
All supercars. I can't think of a supercar that would match this, and it gets worse than that. Let me just give you a couple of bits. We've often talked about the fact that supercars, defined by a whole range of things, I think mainly defined by the fact they're too expensive for normal people to buy, but a whole range of different things, mid-engine mount, look like they're designed to go underneath something half a metre above the ground, all sorts of things. But 4.5 seconds was generally a bit of a cut-off to say, you got a supercar, if it can't do 0 to 100 in 4.5 seconds, well, you got a pretty car now. You want a supercar, it's got performance. But 4.5 seconds is really a bit of a joke these days compared to some of the modern EVs. And when we look back at some old supercars, the Ferrari F355 did 4.7 seconds to 100 Ks. The Lamborghini Diablo, 4.1 seconds. Porsche 911 Turbo, 4.5 seconds. They're all pedestrian.
My Tesla Model Y does 4.7 seconds.
That's what I mean. These are pedestrian times. When you're growing up and going, wow, that Ferrari, look at how fast that is, and you've got your nice little Model Y that you pick up the kids and take them to school in, and it's more powerful than some of these supercars. Now, to really lay it on you, an F1 car. Now, an F1 car, probably its greatest strength is not 0 to 100. Its probably greatest strength is more maybe 100 to 300 kilometres an hour, and the incredible grip that they've got with the aerodynamics they've got at those high speeds. But an F1 car only, when I say only, it's not too bad, 0 to 100 in about 2.6 seconds. These are the greatest, fastest, most powerful internal combustion engines on the planet.
Yeah.
And Porsche's got a little SUV that you can just run around and do the shopping with that does 0 to 100 in 2.5 seconds. So you say Lewis Hamilton, Oscar Piastri, jump in your nice F1 car that's cost millions of dollars in development. That's right. Let's do a drag down the road for 100 Ks or get to 100 Ks an hour, and I'll blow you away in my little Porsche that I went to the showroom and just picked up. So it's just mind-blowing. So there's a few things that are happening. regulators worldwide are going to be concerned about this.
Yeah, it is.
You've
It's
got a
gotta be,
license
yeah.
that you said, yes, I can parallel park and I can stop at some traffic lights, and now I'm right to go
Wow.
in a machine that's as fast as an F1 car in certain parts. That's pretty scary. So there is some talk about maybe one of two things. Either you need to default the maximum acceleration, the best you could do, to maybe 5 seconds. Let's just cut the power a little bit. And Tesla, when Tesla first came out, the Model S, for example, and Model S and the Model X, when they had acceleration that was a bit too powerful for people, you actually had users asking Tesla, can you introduce a mode that can to cut the acceleration down? Because they were literally too powerful for people.
Yeah, so they're at chill mode now.
Chill mode, yeah. So you go into and that was a feature that was an update over the air, and you go and press chill mode, and it cuts the power in about half. And I know when one of my children was doing their learners in the Tesla, every time we get in, we just go chill mode, because we thought that was a bit more sensible than the incredible acceleration that it had in normal mode. So regulators are saying maybe just cut it back and say you can't go faster than 5 seconds to 100, or maybe you should have some sort of high-performance license, and that's what they've done in South Australia. They've got a high-performance license. I don't know the criteria that you have to be able to get that, or what cars you can drive, but does that mean you can't drive? You've bought that car, and now they've introduced this, sorry, you can't drive that anymore? But I suppose the same, I know it's probably very limited circumstance, but with motorbikes, if you have L plates, there was a process where you couldn't have a motorbike over a certain number of cc's, so it might have been 600 cc's was the maximum. But then, of course, they introduced turbos, introduced these little pocket rockets that were 250 cc's, so they had to change the rules around that. I think the same for L plates or P plates actually for cars. They can't have a certain power weight ratio.
They can't. Yeah, so my boys couldn't drive the Tesla on their Ps.
Yeah, there you go. So there are rules in place for some drivers, for some licenses, but for adults that have got their full license, basically that's it. You're all expert drivers. You're all Lewis Hamiltons out there, and away you go. So this Porsche, actually the other thing I find intriguing is it's called the Cayenne Turbo EV. And I go, Turbo EV?
Yeah, what? What's your...
Those two seem a slight contradiction there. Of course, maybe Porsche have changed their concept a little bit, but obviously turbo refers to a turbocharger, and maybe they've got other models in the Porsche lineup that aren't turbocharged anymore, so maybe they're just using the word turbo to indicate it's fast. Because everyone goes, we know what that means. Yeah. It means fast, so maybe the whole turbo
It's a word that's changed its definition
possibly,
in popular culture.
But it still seems funny to me having EV turbo. But the stats are quite incredible. 850 kilowatts, 1,500 newton meters of torque. Unbelievable. But it's a 5-seat SUV that you can whack a boat
Family
on,
car.
3.5 ton boat you can stick on the back and tow down to the dam and do a bit of skiing. It's got better ground clearance than a Toyota Land Cruiser. I mean, it seems like it's everything, 623 kilometre range. So it's got incredible performance. It'll tow something. Put all the kids in there, there's enough room for them.
And if Max Verstappen pulls up at you and alongside you at the lights, you've got his
blown
number.
Away. That's right, You've got him done. And the only thing I don't love is you can enable a synthetic V8 soundtrack if you really want that sound of a V8.
So you need that sound.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
So it's fascinating. I think as we get to the stage, there used to be a thing where, are we going to have lots of EVs? I kind of think, well, you and I are convinced anyway, that's where the world's going. I wonder whether the next big discussion is not if we're going to have EVs, but just what happens around the safety and the performance of EVs, because it is getting to the stage where, wow, they're just blowing things away. I think the main limit now is just how much gripper is in those tyres to be able to put all that power down to the ground.
Well, that's all we have for you today, folks. The Tech Talking Well has pretty much run dry, and each time I dry up the bucket now, all I get is this muddy slush at the bottom of the bucket with some circuit board components from an old Commodore 64 personal computer. So we'd better sign off. Thanks for another cracking Tech Talk, Matt.
Look, always my pleasure, and there's so much to look at with this lot, but I am promising that we keep bringing new technology along, which is what we do, but in a very soon episode, maybe next week, maybe the week after, we'll have our 7G for Christmas. I've been trying to work through our 7G, get our gift guide together, but it's getting close to Christmas now, so people have got to get time to order their gift from the gift guide. But it's coming, I promise it's coming. So I'll be working on that.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning into another episode of Tech Talk with Matthew Dickinson. Tech Talk is best consumed with a generous glass of peppery Shiraz and chased down with a piece or two of rich dark chocolate. That's good Tech Talk. I'm your host, James Eddy, wishing you happiness and prosperity until we meet again, which is hopefully in 1 week's time, so we'd both better get cracking. Now, in the meantime, take care and we'll see you when we see you.